let's get on to that point a little bit more, because you're one of those people that's actually have enough background experience with them to comment on this. A lot of the people that claim to have psychic communications with them are the same people that claiming that all Bigfoot are totally friendly, non-hostile, vegan, blah blah blah. They're your brothers and wouldn't hurt a fly. And so, what do you think of that?
Well, I think that, that's a beautiful thing to think. And I pray to God that it keeps them safe because they're going to need it. We have to remember a couple of things. Their DNA shows that these are human hybrid, regardless of all the flack that's out there and whatever.
At least one kind of them are human hybrids.
Exactly. One kind of them. That's about it too. But you can't fake DNA. Okay. But whether they are a human hybrid, whether they're an animal, the one thing that is undisputable is there is good and bad in everything.
Right.
Okay. It is across the board. It keeps the cosmic balance. These are not any different. And because they are a type of a people, now, if you look at our people, we have rapists, we have pedophiles, we have murderers. I mean, there's a list that could go on forever. But then on the other hand, we also have people that are the salt of the earth type people and loving and caring and giving. And they're the people that give us hope every day. They are not.
In general, the nice people, and the mellow people, or at least the neutral people, very much outnber the crazy psychopathic people.
Exactly.
And you would expect the same to hold true with them too, because even within their troops and stuff, they have like a certain amount of control. The alpha's in charge, what he says goes, blah blah blah.
Yeah, they have a clan leader. They have a hierarchy. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, we are like that with our people. We cannot expect any different from them. I mean, even if you have a dog, you have dogs that are nice, you have dogs that are aggressive. I mean, it's just the way the world works. And people don't want that because I think that they have it in their mind because these are such a rarity, for certain people to even come across them. They want to believe that. They want to believe they're all good. And that's great, but it's not realistic. And this is what I tell everybody. And I get asked this a lot. I work with a lot of people, or I try to help a lot of people. And the first thing I tell them is the good ones, and this is true, the good ones are a deeper, pure love than we as our humans have any knowledge of. It's just on a whole different level. It's just absolutely amazing. However, the bad ones are lethal. And for anybody to believe at all that they are not is ridiculous. Now, that doesn't mean everybody needs to go out there and hunt them down because they're not. Most of them that are that aggressive literally want to be left alone.
Yeah. I pointed that out to people before too. In general, you're not going to run into any of the hyper aggressive ones anywhere near civilization. If you're near where people are, you'll run into the ones that are willing to put up with humans because they're around them a lot. The ones that hate us and don't want nothing to do with us are going to be out in the middle of nowhere to get far away from us.
Exactly. Now, I mean, there are extreme cases. I was called out of state to help on a case where there was a clan that were trying to kill a woman. And fortunately, knock on wood, thank you, Lord, I was able to put a stop to it. Okay. And she's doing wonderfully now. She's not being, I mean, they weren't letting her out of her house. If she tried to get out at night, there's no way. She had to park her car at the bottom of her steps.
What the hell did they have against her that they were after her that bad?
We don't know to this day. I know this person, she's a good person. And the thing that was sad about that is she'd had communication with them since she was a child and never had any issues. It just happened to be the clans that were up in that one clan that was up in the mountains had come down out of the mountains and didn't like people. They just flat out didn't like people. And so they had gone after her, and we were very fortunate that the situation got rectified and she's doing wonderfully and they don't bother her anymore. And there are good ones around her, so she has a copacetic relationship with those. But the other thing that comes into play, and people really don't get this, I mean, our people, and I don't mean this to sound unkind, but we are very arrogant. And everybody wants to see them. I get it. I get that all day long, okay? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but when you go out of your door, you're now in their home. And if you're sitting in your living room with your children, and a strange person that you don't know comes walking in your door, or even a Bigfoot comes walking in the door, you're going to look for something to protect your child. You're going to look for something to protect yourself. But yet when our humans go into the woods, which is technically their home, they're mystified that they show signs of aggression. Mm-hmm. And it's not anything different than how we would react. But the other problem they have is their ways are not ours. They're never going to be. Okay. We view things a certain way. And when it gets to their end, they don't understand that because they view it a different way. So a lot of the problems where there's aggressive ones, I would say at least 70% of the time, it's a miscommunication between the two types of humans, because our people don't understand what they're doing or why they're doing it or what their intentions when they do certain acts are. And they surely don't understand what we're doing. I mean, we're going out there to watch them and they're thinking we're in their home invading with their families, And so I try to, when I talk to these people and when I get out to the conferences or the radio shows or podcasts or whatever, I try to really stress that to people. There is a cultural difference. These beings have their own laws. They have their own culture. They have their own hierarchy. They have all their own things, just like we do. But most people don't know what theirs are. So it's miscommunicated. I mean, I had a gentleman that was like, this thing attacked me. I said, how did it attack you? It was waving its arms at me. It was being aggressive. I said, no, it was waving his arms at you because it wanted you to leave. You probably had a family unit. I mean, did he touch you? No. Did he chase you? No. But he was aggressive because he was waving his arms. And so I always tell people, if they want to hurt you, they don't miss.
Yeah.
And I don't care what gun you think you're going to carry. You're not slowing them down.
Even if they chase you and you get away, that you got away because they didn't want to catch you.
And that's it.
If they wanted to catch you, they would have.
Exactly. I mean, they make runaways and just to get you out of there. I mean, perfect example. Okay. At my house, when I was in Michigan, the rule was nobody's in those woods at night without me. I don't care how big and bad of a child you think you are, or you're a teenager or whatever. You can go out, around the house where the floodlights are. Nobody goes into those woods unless I'm with them. And I was not so much concerned that they would get hurt, other than the fact that I knew that they were out. I didn't want my kids scared. I didn't want the foot scared. So it was a mutual concern for both sides. And my kids always followed that. They were very good about that. And my son had a friend over. And, you have to understand, he was 14, 15 years old, him and his friend. And they were outside and they were playing basketball. And the floodlights were out for them. And they heard a scream. And it sounded like a woman that was being hurt. Okay. Which is, most of us know that have heard some of their calls and their yelps. It can sound like that. So my son was always raised that, if nothing else, you're a compassionate human being. If somebody needs help, you help them to the very best of your abilities. So they heard this woman scream, or what they thought was a woman, and him and his friend didn't even think twice. They ran back to the back of the woods because that's where it came from.
Oh, God. It's a good thing they don't live out here in the mountains, because mountain lion screams sound like that too.
Well, and we had a cougar that was out there. The neighbor behind us had a cattle farm and called me one morning to say, I just saw a big cougar going into the back of your property. Be careful when you're out walking, know. And my son didn't even bat an eye. He heard the scream and he goes running back there. I didn't realize him and his friend had went back. And I had taken a shower. I get out of the shower and I hear my son yelling for me. So I go running outside thinking, oh my God, what's going on? They had ran to the back part of the woods and there was a female with a child out there. Now, what she was yelling about, I don't know. But they ran back to help her thinking a woman was being hurt or injured. And here's this female Bigfoot with her child. Now, she doesn't want anybody back there with her kid in the middle of the night. So she yelled at him, thrashed her arms around, and she chased them. But she only chased them. Here's the thing. I mean, they were absolutely terrified when they came up. But she didn't even chase them all the way back to the house. She chased him enough to get him away from where her child was. And then she stopped. She did what she needed to do. She scared him away. I'm sorry, that's not any different if somebody tries to enter your home and your kids are here and you're going to either, threaten to call 911 or pull out a gun or scream or throw whatever. You're going to try to intimidate them to get them to leave.
Yeah, I
And that
mean, if you think about it, she's being nice. She just put up her arms and went ooga booga to scare
exactly,
him out of her house. Like I would
and
have
that was
just
all
grabbed
she
a
did.
shotgun and blasted him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, yeah, but that's exactly what she did. And so when my son and his friend got up there, they were all hysterical. Mom, your Bigfoots did this, and I'm like, to begin with, they're not mine, but two,
Yeah, yeah,
you
they're
went back.
yours. You're
Yeah.
responsible for them.
Oh my gosh, I can't get him to do anything I want him to do. People tell me that all the time. Will you tell my foot, since you can talk to him, tell my foot to do this, this, and this? And I said, yeah, and I got swampland for you too. It's all, I mean, if this is what you're going to believe, that'll be great.
Yeah, the
And
swampland that they live on. That yeah.
exactly. So, and once he got in the house, I was like, are you okay? And he said, yeah. I said, okay, fine. You got scared to death because you were somewhere you weren't supposed to be. Mom, I heard this woman scream. I thought she was hurt. And I said, I appreciate that because that shows me that you've listened to something I've said to you. And I understand you're trying to help her. Okay. But I've talked to you guys before about all these weird noises coming out of the woods. And so that was the last time he did that. But, that's the other thing. They can imitate anything. There isn't a noise out there they can't imitate, and that includes voices. And the kids would hunt they would hunt. We had a front and a back, a front, a middle, and a backwoods. And when they would go to hunt out back, I would tell the foots, they're going out there to hunt. You need to take the families, do whatever you want to do, but do it in the front section. And they were very, very good about it. And so we were able to hunt in the back. And they would, everybody was out and safe because I let them know what was going on. But, all these crazy things would go on. And my son was out there one day and he came, or it wasn't my son, it was my ex-husband. And he came in just absolutely livid. And he said, why are you out there talking and making noises and scaring the deer away? And I'm looking at him like he's crazy. And I said, I haven't left this house. Yes, you did. I know you. I've known you for 15 years. I know what your voice sounds like. And I said, well, apparently you don't. I haven't left the house. And my kids are like, Dad, Mom's been here the whole time. And he said, but I heard you. And I said, no, what you heard was a Bigfoot imitating my voice. So after that, the law was, if you get called out in the woods, or if you think I'm out in the woods and I'm hollering for you to come near me or whatever, you don't come unless you physically see me. If you don't show up, you're not getting grounded. You're not in trouble because, this is what they can do. So, I mean, we had certain rules and regulations that were different from your normal kids, to work with it, but it worked, and they would take months and years to explain all the things that actually went on there. But that's why Igor was so attracted to it. He came out the first time and he was going to stay a couple hours and he stayed 10 days. And the only reason he left after 10 days was he had a plane ticket back to Moscow. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left. And he came right back and stayed, he would stay anywhere from 2 to 4 months at a time.
Yeah.
He had his own room there. He knew what was going on, just like my house now. He's got his own room. He's got it covered, But it was amazing. And it's good now. I mean, we've got 4 groups here right now. And it's definitely active. We had an issue the other night where they kept letting puppies out of kennels, and I'd look out there and I'd see their black heads, but, and we've got youngsters that are here, and it's good. It's not like it was at that particular residence, but some of those clan members are up here now as well, or down here, not all of them. But it was pretty amazing. I mean, they would go out and they had this area. It was probably maybe 30 feet from my front door, because you would go out my front door and within 15 to 20 feet was the tree line. And then just another 10 feet in that, they had taken and drug in these logs and they made a rectangular area. And at the end of the rectangle, they made this huge arc with all this brush underneath of it. And then they had a teepee in there and an A-frame and all kinds of different things, all within this rectangle they had created. And if you went into the teepee and put your hand up there at the tip of it, you could feel the energy pulsate. And they would get a huge group of them, and they would go inside that rectangle and into that teepee, and then it would get quiet for an hour or two before all of a sudden I'd hear them moving around again. Whether or not there was a portal in there, I'm not going to say it wasn't, because that would be the only thing that really made sense.
Yeah, but maybe they're making their own primitive orgone accumulators or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a lot of these structures that if you find the right spot in them, there's this huge absorbent amount of energy in them. And there have been people, not only in the States, but in Russia as well, that have taken a light bulb and just held it up in there, and light bulbs come on.
So do you think some of their tree structures are actually some kind of a, physically useful energy collectors? Because it seems like a lot of them are just like markers and stuff, especially like random snaps and stuff along trails where they just snap things as they're going along.
It's another form of language.
Yeah.
And some of them are just because they're having fun. A lot of them mean things, and they are markers. But there are some that absolutely. I mean, I had a friend of mine, and I've worked with him and his family they have 25 acres, something like that. And I've worked with him and his family as well as with his Bigfoot for years now, whether it be in communication, explaining things from our people and explaining their people to him, that type of thing. And I was taking him through and showing him different structures because he wasn't that aware of it, and things that he had overlooked but were actually something that were significant, and going over it with him. And I told him, I said, I want you to take your hand, and they had made like a complete loop with this one tree. It was a thin tree and they just made it in a circle. And I said, I want you to put your hand in it. And he said, okay. I said, tell me what you feel. And he put his hand in there and he pulled it out. I said, oh my gosh. He said, it radiates. I said, it does. It's energy. And so he decided he was going to take a video of me explaining about this circle. As he did, we got on video something very quickly running out of that loop.
Nah, cool.
And I mean, just really, really quick. It happened like a flash, but it was definitely there.
So you sent me that video, right?
I need to get it from him. I can probably get it from him. I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, if we can get it in time, it'd be great to be able to show that so that we can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was pretty intense, So the other thing is they see all these structures, ground structures, and everybody calls them glyphs. They're not a glyph. Glyphs are on rocks. They're on walls. You know what I'm saying? They're pictures that. Yeah, exactly. But yet everybody, because it's on the ground, it's a glyph. No, it's not. They're ground structures. That's all they are. But they can use them as a way to communicate. I have a mini pig that gets out on a regular basis just because he wants me to pull all my hair out and make me crazy. And
her tails of her mini pig are already notorious to me.
Oh my God, aren't they crazy? Oh
yeah,
Lord,
it's like he's like a little Houdini all by himself, and like the foot's like make sure he escapes too.
He does. They do. They help him. I mean, he's just a little jerk. He's the sweetest thing ever. Oh my God, he's a cuddle bunny, but he can make me crazy. And he got out. And normally if he gets out, he just stands outside the fence like he's flipping me the finger or something because he actually did it. And then you tell him, get your little, porky butt in the house right now. And he'll come up and he'll either come in the house or he'll go into the garage. I mean, their garage, they used to be in the house full time. And they used to actually get up and sleep on the bed, but I got a new bed and it's too tall. They can't. And we have an attached garage now where we didn't before. And so now they're roughing it. That's became their bedroom. My husband was so excited to have a garage to do things in, and it's not happening. He's accepted it now, almost 2 years later, he's accepted it. But their litter boxes out there, their beds are out there, their toys, they have an air conditioner, they have a heater. I mean, they're roughing it. They're really roughing it. Yeah. I don't know how they do it. But all you do is just open the garage door a little bit and he gets out and then he comes and runs back in and looks at you and wags his tail like, ha, 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 ha. Isn't this funny? But he's just a jerk, but he's so loving. That's what drives me crazy. And you can do anything with him. He's just a jerk. He's a rebel. He doesn't like anything that, he wants to be free. So he gets out and he disappeared. And the only time he ever leaves the yard is when there's foots out in the woods. And I know they're calling him. And so I kept calling and calling and calling, and he didn't come. And now I'm getting worried because it's just, that just isn't how he normally is. It's happened a few times, but not a whole lot. And so I came in the house and I thought, what do I do? I mean, I can't find him. The woods is just, I live right in the middle of a ton of woods. And I'm thinking, what in the world? Pretty soon I went back out there and I'm shaking the food, which he is one of the few pigs that food doesn't work as a bribery. And I'm calling. And he finally comes running. As I go to the front of the garage, they had built a ground structure for him. And a small X laying on the ground means welcome. Okay. If you have tall, very big X's upright, that means stay out. It's a territory mark.
How about like 6-story tall ones? What does that
Yeah,
mean?
I saw those. That means stay the hell out.
So when I came walking out on the wrong side of it, that was probably a bad idea.
That was probably bad. That was bad. Hey, I did that up in Tennessee, and the only reason I didn't have like wrath of God coming on my head was because they were the ones that wanted me in Tennessee, and I was there to do some work for the Foots, and so I was granted permission to cross it. But I thought I sure wouldn't want to do it any other time.
Yeah,
But
this was a bad one. We got it on video too back in September, because it's like we're coming down the hill. I see this gigantic 6-story tall X structure, and there's a leaner against it on the other side from where we're at. And I'm like, oh crap, are we in the wrong place? And then it occurs to me like, well, not only are we on the wrong side of the 6-story tall no trespassing sign, currently we're lost because we literally didn't know exactly where we were. We were trying to find the trail again at that point.
you need to I'm sure you got pictures of it. Put those on a photo editor and blow it up, because when they're big like that, normally they actually have guards, active guards that stand guard over that place. And you'll probably find them, because if they're cloaked and you're not focused your camera lens on them, you'll get a picture of them. They'll show up.
Oh, yeah, we got video of the whole thing, so if they're around there, they're probably on it.
Oh, yeah. So they had this ground structure for him. And I said, okay, you guys, who put this here and why? And they said, because we're letting him know that's where you go in at to get back in the garage. It's the same exact place he goes in all the time. And they had it down there, and they had a little stick on there showing an arrow of him coming into the garage. I mean, they can be really kind. The good ones are just unbelievable. I mean, you can't get over how kind they are. But there are bad ones, and people need to be aware of it. Now, they've got a thing right now that, and I'm not going to go into names because I don't get into that, but there's a group now that's trying to get people to come forward and give out their locations for all their Foots, because apparently that's supposed to be your duty to do this so that people are aware. It's not your duty to out them. Okay. No. They don't need to be outed. People need to.
So who needs to be aware? The deep state kill teams?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's not enough of them out there. Yeah. I mean, what needs to happen is not that we out them. It's not even going around and get petitions for protection, because people poach all the time. Yeah. What needs to happen is people need to be educated, not only about the ways of the Bigfoot, but how to be in an area with them, how to conduct yourself. I'm not going to say it's going to work 100% of the time, but it's definitely going to make an improvement. Now, the people that throughout the years that I've talked to and I don't go soliciting people come to me. They find me one way or another, or they're somebody they know they've talked to, say, talk to her, she'll help you out. And I always do. I mean, if I can help somebody, I will. I don't get paid. I don't want to get paid. I do it because if I can help somebody, I feel like that, morally, I feel like that's what I should do. But once they learn the ways of these people, and they understand where that disconnect and miscommunication comes from, 9 out of 10 times it calms it down. I mean, there are areas that it's not, like if you go to Land Between the Lakes, there's not anything going to calm that down. There's a lot going on over there. But I mean, in a normal situation, but our people have to be flexible. I mean, if you're in an area with your children, be smart, get out of there. Don't come in there like Attila the Hun because you're our type of human. It's going to be everything else that leaves, because it's not going to work.
There's some troops and clans of Bigfoot that just don't want any humans in their territory.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've come across some like that.
I like to liken this to the situation in my state where I'm living right here is Montana, and we make the majority of the income, $4.5 billion of it a year in the state, comes from tourism. People want to come here. They want to ski. They want to camp. They want to, raft the rivers and see the wildlife and all that kind of stuff. We're also the #1 animal attack capital of the continent, even beating out Alaska in that regard.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, we're making all our money off tourism, but on the other hand, people get mangled by animals. So you know what the deal here really is they just need some basic information on, if you run into one of these guys, here's what you can do, and here's what you shouldn't do. Because we're right in the middle of Grizzly Bear Central here, and there's people backpacking and camping all over the damn place, and you don't get that many bear attacks on people because they've actually been educating them about what to do and don't do in grizzly country.
Well, you know what? Education is power. The old saying, knowledge is power. It is. And I'm not going to tell you that 100% of time this will work and there won't be any issues, because there will.
Right.
But it will be far fewer and less frequent than going in there as we're doing it now. It just simply doesn't work. And there's so many people out there that are kind and good people that want to help and see them protected. And I've watched countless people try to get petitions. They don't generally go through, but even to the point where a lot of them want to give them, because they're part human, let's give them human rights. That can't happen because they don't understand them. Their lives are not going to work in the confines of our humans' laws. They just are not. Some people even wanted to give them constitutional rights. They don't care about constitutional rights. They don't even understand it. They can't pay taxes. They don't understand they don't understand what property laws are, or boundaries. The only boundaries they understand is our territory and their territory.
See, there you go. That's why the government doesn't acknowledge that they're a real species, because they can't figure out how to tax them.
Exactly. Well, and this is another thing, and this didn't happen to me. I mean, I was brought in on it because the person called me, and this is a perfect example that you can find a way to be okay. And if you know what you're dealing with, you can tell if it's an attack and when it's not. I have a very, very dear friend of mine. His name is Dr. John Stamey, just a beautiful human being. He really and truly is. I'm so blessed to have him as a friend. And he had gone out of town and he was staying in this cabin, which belonged to a friend of his. And he goes there all the time. And he knows that there's what's up there. He's, found prints and he's heard them and everything. And he got up there late at night. And I'd always told him, if you get into a situation where you think something's going AWOL there, you need to call me so I can at least try to talk to him down or something, or see what I can do. I can't always do it, but change things, but I can try. And so he normally does. And he told me, this is where I'm going to be at. Everything so far is fine. Well, he got there later than expected. And his friend, he had dogs that were there that are normally wide awake and hyper and running around. And for whatever reason, they were out cold, like dead to the world. They would not wake up, literally, which is very unusual. So he goes out to the cabin, and it's a very, very tiny, tiny cabin. We're talking about like a building big enough, for you to go in and lay down in the bed and get up and leave in the morning. So he goes in there, and he said he felt like he was being watched when he got out of the car. It was much later than when he had thought he was going to get there. It was like 11, 12 o'clock. So he had his phone, and he was exhausted from driving. He goes in and he gets in this cabin and he shuts the door, and he felt like he was being watched the whole time. And as he's in there, he starts hearing these big footsteps pacing around the outside of the cabin. Now, he stayed there multiple times, and this hasn't happened. And they kept going around the cabin and around the cabin. And he said, as heavy as those footsteps were, he knew. He knew what was out there.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where it rocked that cabin. It did. And he's like, if they wanted to push it over, they could have easily, because it was a very old cabin. And he went to go call me, only to find out that his phone was almost dead and the charger was in the car.
No. And
there was no way in this world he was going out. So he basically poured himself a drink and said, okay, sweet mother of God, I'm just going to go to bed. But it was very frightening. It was exciting, but it was frightening, because the size of this thing that was walking around this itty bitty cabin, he could tell that if he wanted to, he could tip this whole thing over and that would be the end of it. So he called me the next morning, and I knew something was wrong. I had picked it up the night before. I couldn't reach him where he was at. He didn't have any service. And so I knew something was going on. And he called me the next day, and I'm like, are you okay? And he said, yeah. He said, you won't believe what happened. I said, well, I figured something had happened. So I reached out to the foot, and they weren't even trying to hurt him. They were actually doing a first hunt with one of the male children there. And when my friend got there, he happened to walk in on it. All they wanted was him to just stay put in the cabin. They never touched him. They never hurt him. When he got up in the morning, it was all over and done with. And he was able to come and go freely without a problem. The dogs were wide awake again. The dogs weren't hurt. My friend wasn't hurt. I'm sorry if people get scared just by their very presence. But they can't change what they are. They can't change their size. They can't change how much hair they have. any more than we can.
They're big
They
and scary. They can't help
exactly. And even he said, they did nothing to hurt me. Now, had it not been somebody else that, because he knows me, and we've talked about this so many times, didn't take it, he never did, God love him, take it as an act of aggression. He knew something was going on. He didn't know what at the time until I told him what was going on. Then it made perfect sense. You know, and he's gone up there since then, and he gets along beautifully with him. You know, he's had a sighting of him, you know, and it's gone well. But fortunately, he was smart enough to say, I know if they wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. You know, and when he didn't really understand what was going on, he reached out to me and I explained the situation. He's like, that makes perfect sense, because that's exactly how they acted. They just didn't want me coming out. That was the only thing. They didn't want him to come out of the cabin.
You know, that's the thing that alarms me about the bad ones, because as far as I know, they have the same capabilities as the good ones, which is to say they can at least read your surface intentions and your emotional state. And, you know, if you got a bad one that decides he wants to jump you, and he's got that kind of ability, and, you know, he's like, he knows you're going to take a walk down to the creek here in a few minutes and go fish something out of it, and you'll have your back to the cabin, and he can just walk up behind and snap your neck.
Absolutely. And I have known people where they have put it in their mind to go to certain places because it made it easier for the Bigfoots to get to them, you know? So the abilities that they have, we have no defense against. You know, it's like with zapping. When they zap you, depending on the individual that's doing it and what they want to happen to you, they could stop your heart. I mean, in a heartbeat, that's it. You're done. You know, because it's an energy. They, you know, they're taking energy from them and they're zapping you with it. And it's just like if you got electrocuted, they can make you physically sick. You can get headaches. I had a girl that, you know, I had known for quite a while, and she went out in the woods with me all the time. This is back in Michigan. And we were walking the property like I always do. And I lived on a private drive, and we crossed our little private drive, and there was woods over there that was, some of it was ours. And we're walking all through it and onto the county land as well. And I knew there was a female with children over there. There was a couple of them. And she had told me, she said, will you come up to where my children are? And I said, yeah. And so I said, where are you at? And she said, come down here. And I went down there, and my friend was with me. And I had seen little tiny black heads popping up and down out of this section of bushes, you know, so I was pretty confident that's where, you know, that's where I needed to go. So I'm walking over there, and they kept asking me to come. I didn't think anything about it. Well, apparently I was welcome, but my friend wasn't. And we got probably about 15 feet from that bush, and I looked to my side, and I don't see my friend. And I turn around, and she's on the ground, grabbing her head, going, make them stop, tell them to stop. This is killing me. Just make it stop. I'm standing there perfectly fine, but yet, I mean, they can be that precise with it. It doesn't, just because, you know, you're there, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. It's to whoever they want it to be at. I had another friend of mine that we went and did a conference, and we had gone out in the woods. We're going to do a walk around out there. And he was standing next to me, went to walk in the woods. And he kept telling me he thought he was dying, and I was fine. And he was on the ground. So, I mean, they can make it specific. They really can. And they can be so dangerous when they zap.
Sounds like when Igor was visiting the Red Squatching boys over there in Nebraska, he might have got zapped.
Yeah. Well, he's indestructible. He was so cute. He was here. And we have, like I said, there's about 4 different groups here, but there's a young male child who we absolutely adore here. And there's his mom and dad. And then there's these 3 individuals that for whatever reason are always with them when this baby's, they always call them the 3 wise men because they're always together. But on both sides of my property are big pine trees and brush and foliage. And it really, when I first moved in here, it looked like a privacy fence around the whole property. It doesn't look like that now. It looks like Swiss cheese with a door. And so they would go and get into all this bushes through there. And the young male child, for whatever reason, that's where he likes to play. I don't understand it, but that's his playroom. And he goes up and down these trees and goes between, and he runs through there. And they've created this tunnel system all the way through these bushes. And there's an opening at the end of it that's quite large. I mean, they could easily go in there and sit down. And when you get in there, all the bushes and the small trunks of the trees that are in there are all flattened. You can see where they sit.
Yeah.
And Igor decides he's going to go out there because the night before, a friend of mine and I were standing on the porch. And as we were standing there, the child was playing. And so we're all on the porch watching this little boy play. And he said, he kept saying, my mom and dad are close. And I knew his dad was. I had seen his dad, who's massive, by the way, standing directly across the road. And my road is like a 2-track. It's not very big. And he was there, and I saw where the other 3 were standing in the bushes. So we knew they were there, but I hadn't seen Mom yet. And Mom decided to make her appearance known. She come from the back of the woods, ran up my property line, and all I saw was this massive gray and black blur as she dove into those bushes. I mean, I can't even tell you how fast this girl went. She flew in there. So that had happened the night before. So Igor gets up. He's now going to go in because he wants to go into these tunnels in the bushes. And I said, no, no. And he's like, well, yes, I need to go in there. And I said, no, you don't. Number one, they've built that how they want. They don't need the stink from our people on it. They don't want it in there. All you're going to do is make them mad. And he says, oh, no, I'll be very careful. And I know he would be, but they don't like it.
Yeah.
And I said, not to mention the fact here in South Carolina, we have the copperheads and the rattlers and the water moccasins. And you can't swing a dead cat without finding a venomous snake here. It's crazy. And I said, you've got all that mulch in the bottom on there. The copperheads get in that and you cannot see them. I don't want you in it. Oh, no, they will not bite me. And I told him, I looked right at him. I said, well, you know what? I'm going to get a memo out to them immediately. And once they realize that you're Dr. Igor Borsteff, I'm sure that will pull weight and they're not going to bite you. But until that memo gets out so that they all know, let's humor me because we all know, I'm like Miss Safety Patrol and I'm going to worry. Oh, no, dear, it will be fine. So he goes in there anyway. And I said, you're going to give me a heart attack. Will you please get out of all that mulch? So he finally did after he went in there and walked around and had us film him and everything. I mean, he's just priceless. I adore him. He's going to make me crazy.
All the dangerous and poisonous animals on Earth have already gotten the memo that, he's famous. Yeah, don't mess with him. He's scary. Run.
Exactly. I have got more memos I keep putting out for this man. It's ridiculous. But then the next day we're out there and we're standing on the porch and it sounded, I know rattlesnakes, will make the rattle, but they don't generally grab and, come together in packs and get 9-10 feet off the ground. And those bushes shook and it sounded like maracas in there at the same time. And of course, at first, as soon as we heard that rattle noise, we thought it was a rattlesnake. So we're looking all around till we look at the bushes and the bushes are getting moved at the same time. And all these rattle noises are coming 9 and 10 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
And we told him, you are cut off, mister. No more into the bushes for you, because we asked him what was the matter. Why were they so agitated? Because we don't get that aggression here. We really don't. And I didn't get it at the house in White Cloud. And I could tell there wasn't a strange one in here. It was one of our normal groups. And they were like, you let that man, do not let that man in here. My child plays here. They were very adamant. I'm like, you got it. Off limits, not a problem. And I told him, I said, you don't go in there. Don't go in there again.
Yeah, but, the kids' playground.
It really is. I have a picture of this face, actually 2 pictures of him. And we have a big oak tree in the front yard of him going up there. He goes there and then he goes over on the trees on the property line. And he busted all these huge branches down there. And then after it broke, because, there's all these viney plants all around here that attach everything to each other. And we couldn't get it down. So we had these big, huge branches that would take like 2 or 3 people to move, hanging there precariously by vines because, he climbed on them. So they were up one night, got up the next morning, they were down. No wind.
Now we know who's making all those damn widow makers.
Exactly. I'm not kidding you. But people need to be aware, and there is a way to try to, for the most part, live copacetically with them. It doesn't happen in all cases, but in all fairness, there's not everybody that gets along with their neighbors.
True.
It's basically the same thing. The only problem is because of the sheer strength and the paranormal abilities that they have, they can be lethal. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
I mean, and like I said, I've been called out to different areas, a couple different states, people that were having a hard time and these super aggressive ones. When I was in Texas, I went there for a friend to help him set up a research area, and I got bluff charged by a male that was coming after my friend's grandchildren. And he told me that I was, oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was down towards the coast. I can't remember the name, some little tiny, tiny town down there. And the grandkids were there and he was letting them run around. I'm like, the area that he took us to, we drove back there, is on a 100-acre parcel that backed up to a nature preserve.
Yeah.
And we drive back there, we get out of his truck and there's dead animal bones all over the place. And I said, where are we at? And he said, well, I brought you back here because there's all these berry bushes that they eat. I said, you just took your grandchildren to their dining room table. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Get these kids, get them in the truck. Well, meanwhile, the kids had been running, and they were not that old. And there was an old tree stand there, and they went playing on this tree stand. I'm like, just get the kids, and we got to get out of here like now. And you can see the bushes moving on all sides. We're kind of like a little alcove where they were all coming in. And so I'm trying to get these kids down when the male he was mind speaking. He was making some violent, verbal noises. But he was mind speaking. He says, leave the kids and you leave. And I said, I'm not leaving these kids here. Oh, yes, you will. Or I will make you. And I said, you can die trying because I'm not leaving these kids here. And I'm thinking he's probably going to call my bluff. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not leaving these kids. So I walked towards him because I wanted to get past the tree stand where the kids were in. My thing was I wanted to be between them and the kids. And so I moved forward and I'm thinking this is such a bad idea. And I'm trying to get my friend to get these kids out of this tree stand. And there was a big palmetto bush that was actually a little bit taller than my waist. And it was standing right directly next to me, like the palms were actually touching my leg. And I'm standing there when he charged. And he leveled that bush. I mean, leveled it. Palms are flying all over the place. The kids were almost down from the tree stand when it happened. And they went up that tree stand like a bat out of hell. And they're like, what happened? What happened? And I'm like, oh, no, he's just playing silly old foot. Look at, he tossed this log or this branch over here. He just wants to play. And I'm, because the kids feed off of your reaction.
Right.
I can't freak out because I'm trying to put on a show for these kids so that they're not panicked. And so my friend is standing way behind me and he's like, oh, my God, what just happened? And I said, just get the kids and get them out of here. And he says, what do you want me to do? I said, open the truck door and get these kids out of here. I'm not moving till the kids are down. So the kids did get down and he got them back to the truck. And the whole time, I'm getting growled at and yelled at and carried on and things are getting tossed. But the thing of it is, if he wanted me dead, he would have killed me. I mean, this is how close he was. Not only did he level that palmetto bush, my hair blew back by the wind that he generated going by. So he got the kids in the truck. He said, come on. And I said, I'm not moving until the kids are in the truck. And so when he got the kids in the truck, then I just backed up all the way. There's no way I was turning my back on them, and we got out of there and everybody was okay. We were very lucky. But again, he didn't listen. He did what he wanted to do, not use his head, didn't pay attention to the sign. There were signs all over there, giant X's everywhere. And what does he do? He goes in there because that's what he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't work that way. And a lot of things they do, people misinterpret, like with that one person that because he was waving his hands, that to him meant he was being aggressive. No, it means get the heck out of where you're at. You're not supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. Well, dear, I hate to tell you, but we're kind of like over time constraints already here.
Goodness.
So we're going to have to cut her short at this point. But I will definitely be inviting you to come back on the show and continue telling us more of all of your stories. Yeah.
Well, you have a wonderful night.
And you have a wonderful night too. And everybody out there in listener land, hope you enjoyed the show. You guys have a wonderful evening as well. And make sure to come back for the next episode of World Bigfoot Radio.
Take care.
And don't hug the Wookiee.